Robot Developed with Womb for Human Babies by Rini Lindstrom, founder Inside Awareness Center for Integrative Somatic Learning. A YouTube video announced the development of a robot with a womb in China designed to host human babies during their pre-birth stages. A few years ago, I posted a picture of a room filled with standalone womb-shaped technological eggs that encased pre-birth babies. It was from an article that was written on this topic. Now, a YouTube video suggested that it is in the testing stages in China. It was first successfully experimented with on animal fetuses. The focus of the presentation was on the benefits for humanity. Unfortunately, there are shadow benefits for characters in humanity that do not benefit the whole of it, rather treats it like a commodity for their benefit. This is a documented pattern of some segments of society using others for gain with the belief of entitlement, in particular babies, toddlers, children, and teens. Throughout history, there has been this element in society, yet it has grown both in size and in horrific actions taken. The focus in the last post was on the topic of a shift in human function this author is observing through her practice. She is recognizing a trend that seemingly downgrades functional abilities mentally, emotionally, and physically, in comparison to the upgrading of robotic function that mimics human behaviors and abilities. Now, in this recent announcement where robots are carrying babies to term, a fundamental feminine attribute is being replaced, the natural creation of life. The question becomes the female being downgraded and replaced. This seems even more significant than in the past. There is a general understanding in the community that has a practice in human function that suggests if you don't use it, you lose it. Would this be a function of the feminine that would be lost over time? What are the long-term consequences for this human experiment? Socialized long-term lifestyle influence examples. It takes a few decades to clearly define the outcome of experiments on humans. This ranges from lifestyle trends in behavior, fashion, and a focus of attention through belief systems. There are cycles through history where timelines can be measured. It also includes the focus in education, business, and careers. Patterns can be identified where historical facts have not been altered. A perspective from actual experiences comes from when this author sang for a local choir that had a large demographic of retirees. These retirees traveled to third world countries and donated time and funds towards rebuilding segments of missing lifestyle needs, like wells for water and schools for education. This wasn't sponsored by groups or through an authority in the country that oversaw the development. It was their own volition with no consultation as far as localized long-term planning that went into considering all aspects of potential outcomes. While doing this, they ignored the needs in their own country and counted upon their governments to provide, instead of balancing support efforts between their country and the one they went to themselves. Eventually, it led to progress in the foreign countries, yet this author believes it also led to the migration of scams into local communities of their home country. In addition, there is another experience where long-term consideration wasn't given to the long-term effects of international students. It became a perfect foundation for international awareness of potential weaknesses in society the students were invited into. These weaknesses were identified, and theft became an unwelcome consequence. An example is in Ontario's bedroom communities that are empty during the day. There are international rings that fly in for a set number of days that go into these predetermined subdivisions and canvass to target these homes. They then fly out with the proceeds of theft and return to their own countries. Canadians became targets due to a lack of familiarity of this behavior. The suggestion here is that people come up with ideas to solve acute problems they perceive and dive into fixing it with their strategy without enough consideration to potential problems it may create. Becoming aware of the consequences of having international students invited into homes coincided with this author's hosting their own international students. In a conversation with a young Mexican teenager, she was told about how his family belonged to a church that went into a countryside where tribes had no amenities. They were not allowed to take anything with them as gifts, their phones, or accessories. They were instructed to dress down. The focus was to go and play with them only. The group may have a soccer ball to play and connect. The point was to not influence them with anything that they would want to covet for themselves, that would inspire them to leave the tribe and follow them back to the city. It was protecting the visitors and the tribe in a way. Was it right or wrong? That can only be answered with more information and by a person's personal view of the world. Influencing the direction of humanity on the robotic wombs. This question about robots bringing babies to term is also a question that needs to be viewed from a personal view of the world. However, it's also one that needs oversight consideration by many. It will influence the direction of humanity, and everyone will have an opinion or belief surrounding it. What it needs is conscious awareness and a broad spectrum of people in the area of child development and care to participate. It is well documented that a baby learns through an organic process that is somatic awareness. A baby feels the mother's emotions, movements, and voice in utero during and after birth. There is a bonding process that would not be available through a mechanical experience. There are videos, reports, and books with a focus on how babies placed immediately into orphanages after birth and not held developmentally and emotionally different than babies who are placed into the arms of a healthy family. This topic needs more conversations and less acceptance. The first question could be the intention of the project in the first place. What is the strategy for? What is the action in response to? AI overview of childhood neglect in adulthood as described on Google. Childhood neglect. The failure of a caregiver to provide for a child's basic physical or emotional needs often leads deep, invisible scars that persist into adulthood. Unlike active forms of abuse, neglect is characterized by omission, in parentheses, the absence of what should have been there, making its effects sometimes harder for adults to identify. The long-term consequences of neglect generally manifest in the following key areas: emotional and mental health challenges, difficulty regulating emotions. Adults who were neglected often struggle to identify, name, or manage their feelings, sometimes experiencing a sense of emotional numbness or being easily overwhelmed. Low self-esteem and worth. Neglect can foster a persistent belief that one is not good enough, unlovable, or fundamentally flawed. Increased mental health risks. Research links childhood neglect to higher rates of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and borderline personality disorder in adulthood. Persistent feeling of emptiness. Many adults report a chronic feeling that something is missing or disconnected from their internal world. Impact on adult relationships. Insecure attachment styles. Neglect often leads to avoidant attachment, in parentheses, shunning intimacy to protect oneself, or anxious attachment, in parentheses, fearing abandonment and becoming over-dependent. Hyperindependence. A common coping mechanism is the belief that I can only rely on myself, leading to extreme difficulty asking for help or showing vulnerability. People-pleasing. Some adults compensate for early neglect by becoming caretakers, over-accommodating others' needs to secure a sense of worth and avoid rejection. Trust issues. A history of unmet needs often results in deep-seated struggles with trusting others or feeling safe in close connections. Cognitive and neurobiological effects. Brain development changes. Chronic neglect can disrupt the development of brain regions like the prefrontal cortex and amygdala, which are critical for attention, memory, and impulse control. Impaired executive function. Adults may face challenges with cognitive flexibility, decision-making, and self-discipline. Behavioral and physical health outcomes. Maladaptive coping. To numb emotional pain, some adults turn to substance use, eating disorders, or risky behaviors. Physical conditions. Long-term studies suggest an increased risk for chronic conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, and stroke. Economic impact. Studies have observed that neglect is associated with lower education levels and decreased economic productivity in middle age. Despite these profound challenges, the effects of neglect are not always permanent. Therapy and building supportive adult relationships are proven ways to foster resilience and promote healing. If you would like to connect to learn more about educational opportunities, coaching, mentoring, consulting, or functional integrations, the contact link is in the description box below. Please like and subscribe if you like this content, or follow socials. Copyright property posted on Renee Lindstrom's authentic accounts only. There is a list of websites that support the AI overview of childhood neglect in the written article that is available to view at www.reneelindstrom.com. I hope you enjoyed this content, and I look forward to connecting with you in the next one.